My wife said she needed space. The next day, I saw her at the airport, holding my best friend's hand. I am a man of 29. My wife told me she needed space on a Tuesday night. On Wednesday morning, I saw her at the airport holding my best friend's hand. I stood behind a pillar and watched them walk toward the security line like a couple who had done this 100 times. My chest felt like it split and kept splitting. Her name is Claire. We married 3 years ago. We kept things simple, calm, and clean. My best friend is Mark. We grew up on the same street. We shared bikes, exams, and stupid teenage plans. He stood next to me at my wedding and cried harder than I did. I trusted both of them like I trusted the ground under my feet. The space talk sounded rehearsed. Claire said she felt suffocated. She said work was heavy. She said my routine made her feel old. She asked for 1 week to clear her head, no arguments, no questions. I asked if something had happened. She said nothing had happened. She needed to breathe. I said if she needed to stay at her sister's, I would pack her bag. She said she would sort it herself. She hugged me like people hug in waiting rooms. I felt something die right there. I did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling until my phone lit up with a bank notification at 5:20 a.m. 2 plane tickets. 1 booking. Departure that morning. My stomach turned. I checked the airline app and saw the booking number. I saw the destination, Lisbon. 2 seats side by side. I opened our shared calendar. Nothing. I opened her messages. Locked. She had changed her code. I drove to the airport because I needed proof my brain was not inventing this. I stood in the crowd and felt invisible, and there they were. Claire's hand wrapped around Mark's wrist like it belonged there. He leaned in to say something and she laughed. Not nervous laughter. The kind of laugh that says, "We made it." I took a photo with my phone because I knew later I would doubt my memory and try to be kind. The photo would stop me from lying to myself. I did not shout. I did not run at them. I stood still because movement would have turned into begging, and I promised myself at the start of our marriage that I would never beg for the bare minimum, truth. They disappeared beyond security. I drove home on autopilot, parked, and walked straight to the shower fully dressed. The water hit my jacket and I didn't move. I stood there until the water turned cold. I needed the cold to be real because everything else felt like a bad script. At noon I called Mark. He did not answer. I sent one message, "I saw you." No answer. I put the phone down and looked around our apartment. Her coffee mug was still on the counter. She never finished coffee at home because she liked to buy it on the way. I stared at the lipstick mark on the rim. It looked like a signature. I met Claire at university when I was 21. She studied marketing. I studied logistics. She liked plans. I liked plans. She liked lists. I liked lists. We fit. She said I made the world feel steady. I said she made my world feel worth planning. We married after 6 years of dating because everything felt easy. That word should have warned me. Easy turns soft. Soft gets exploited. Mark was always there. He came on our trips. He helped me move furniture. He talked about his relationships like he was always half in, half out. He called Claire, sis. She called him, my second idiot. I never saw a look between them. Not once. And I looked. Jealousy never sat in my gut because friendship sat there first. Things changed 8 months ago. Claire became restless. She said she wanted to travel, before it's too late. I said we could plan something. She said planning kills the feeling. She started working late. She stopped telling the long version of her day. She kept her phone face down. I told myself it was a phase, that everyone goes through dry spells, that silence between partners doesn't always mean a storm. I see now that silence is often shelter for a storm that already happened. I spent the next hours making a list because action calmed my hands. I pulled bank statements and copied the booking info to a document. I screenshotted my message. I took a photo of the empty closet space where her travel bag used to sit. I told myself I was documenting, not obsessing. I called my sister, Sophie, because she is the one person who will tell me I am being stupid in the kindest way. I told her everything. She swore under her breath and asked me to eat. I forced eggs into my mouth and tasted nothing. At 3 p.m. Mark finally replied, "You don't understand. I'll explain when we get back." I wrote, "You chose the airport instead of my door." He wrote nothing. I put my phone on airplane mode because I was about to type things I would regret. I went to my parents' house because I needed faces that were not lying to me. My father listened and said, very quietly, "You don't bargain with someone who decided to treat you like furniture." My mother cried but tried to be brave. She said to keep my dignity. I nodded like I understood how to do that. That night I slept 2 hours and woke with that punch of panic that makes you think you forgot a child somewhere. Except the child I forgot was me. I emailed a lawyer at 6 a.m. and wrote facts: name, date, marriage, joint account, suspected affair, airport evidence. I attached the photo. I didn't write emotions because I needed someone to read without pity. At noon, Claire texted. "I'm safe. Please don't do anything dramatic. I'll be back Sunday. We'll talk." It landed like a command. I replied, "Did you go with Mark?" She wrote, "This is not a good format for this." I replied, "You made the format." She sent, "Please." I put the phone down and walked to the sink and counted to 100. It didn't help. I spent the next days reading everything old that could show me signs I missed. I scrolled through photos and tried to see if his hand was too close to her shoulder in one. I checked messages for jokes that were more than jokes. I felt insane. I was digging for a timeline because a timeline is a map. If I could draw the map, I could walk out of it. On Sunday they returned. I knew the flight number because she kept our travel account connected. I sat at the kitchen table when she came in. She put down her bag and looked smaller than usual. She didn't try to hug me. She asked if I had eaten. I said no. She said we should sit. We were already sitting. She told me she had been unhappy for a long time. She said she tried to tell me with hints. She said I ignored them. I asked why Mark. She said it happened. I asked when. She looked at the floor and said 3 months ago. I felt the room tilt. 3 months ago we had visited my parents for lunch and Mark had come and held my father's tools like he always did. I saw the scene replay and wanted to erase it. She said Lisbon was a mistake and also necessary. She said she needed to see if what she felt was real. I asked if it was. She said yes. She said it was different. She said she felt seen. I said I had eyes. She said it wasn't the same. I asked if she wanted a divorce. She closed her eyes and nodded. I sat very still and tried to notice my breathing so that I would not stand up and lift the table and throw it. I asked her if she had planned the space line with him. She said no. She said the trip wasn't about running away but clarity. I laughed once, loud, because the word felt obscene. She flinched. I told her she owed me the truth about the timeline. She said they kissed the first time at Mark's birthday dinner when I went to the bathroom. She said it was a mistake that kept happening. I stared at the wall behind her head so I would not look at her mouth and imagine that moment. She said she would move out to a friend's place. My hands went cold. I told her she would not take anything beyond her clothes and personal items until we had a plan. She nodded. She was calm. She had rehearsed this scene in her head. She had prepared for my anger and my shock. She had probably practiced the pauses too. She started packing the next morning. I watched her fold jeans we picked together and shirts I ironed before we went out. She put a framed photo of us into a box and then took it out and put it back on the shelf. She left the mug with the lipstick mark because suddenly I realized she hated that mug. I wanted to throw it against the wall because it stood for a lie I had loved without knowing it. When she left, she placed her keys on the table and said she was sorry. The word meant nothing. I nodded. As the door closed, a silence dropped into the room like someone pulled the plug out of the world. I called Mark. He answered like he had been waiting for my number to appear. He started with, "I didn't plan to hurt you." I hung up. He called back. I let it ring. He called again and wrote, "Please." I turned the phone off and put it in a drawer. I needed more than a phone call to understand how to stand up again. The lawyer replied that afternoon. He asked for a meeting. I brought the photo and the bank receipts and a copy of the texts. He listened more than he spoke. He said we could move forward with a separation and protect assets. He asked if there was a chance of reconciliation. I said I would rather sleep on gravel than negotiate with two people who lied to me in my own home. He nodded and started listing steps: inventory, accounts, housing, car, the lease, the savings. It sounded like math. I needed math. I told my parents and sister the plan. My mother kept saying, "I am sorry," like she had done something. My father told me to keep my head and not let anger drive the paper. My sister offered to stay with me for a few nights. I said yes. That night she slept on the couch and I woke at 4 a.m. to find her cleaning the stove because she didn't know what else to do. I thanked her and took the sponge from her hand and we both laughed because the stove didn't matter and still somehow it did. 2 days later, Mark appeared at my door. I opened because running from him felt like letting him have more of my life. He stood there with his hands empty. He looked older. He said he was ashamed. I let him talk because interruption would turn into a fight I might not control. He said it started when Claire came to him for advice about me. He said they talked about marriage and silence and how I avoid conflict. He said they felt close. He said one night they kissed and then they crossed lines because they felt alive. He said he knew I would hate that word. He was right. He said he wanted to tell me but didn't know how to tell me I was losing my wife to him. He cried. I watched him cry and thought about the airport and the way he held her hand like it was a habit. I told him very calmly that he was no longer my friend, not even the kind of friend you keep at a distance out of nostalgia. I told him to leave and not contact me again. He nodded and said he hoped one day. I closed the door. That night Claire sent a structured email about logistics. She proposed dates for collecting the rest of her things. She proposed who keeps what. She suggested she keep the sofa because she found it. I replied with my lawyer in copy and said all items would be inventoried and divided later. She replied, "Okay," with a period. That period felt like a nail. On Friday, I went for a run until my legs shook. I came back, showered, and opened a message from an unknown number containing screenshots of Claire and Mark at a restaurant that was not in Lisbon, dated 6 weeks earlier. The message said, "You deserve to know." No name. No context. I stared at the photos and felt gratitude for a stranger who decided to pick a side. Or maybe it was someone who couldn't watch the lie anymore. I saved the screenshots in a folder named Proof, because names help me feel less lost. I met Claire in a cafe the next day because she asked for a face-to-face talk without lawyers, just once. I agreed with rules: public place, 20 minutes, no pleading, no touching. She arrived on time, hair pulled back like she was going to an interview. She said she would not fight me on anything. She said she would not ask for spousal support. She said she would leave with what she brought into the marriage. She said she wanted it clean. I asked why. She said she wanted to be fair. I said fairness is not a word cheaters get to use without choking on it. She took the hit and did not argue. Then she said something that pushed the blood into my ears. She said she thought I would be relieved because we had been roommates for months. I told her not to rewrite history to fit her script. She said she was not rewriting, she was surviving. I told her survival doesn't require betrayal, it requires honesty. She looked away and wiped under her eye, and I remembered the woman I promised to protect. I reminded myself she was the one I now had to protect myself from. As we stood to leave, she said one more line, "Please don't destroy Mark publicly. He has clients who depend on him." I laughed again, short and ugly. I said she worried about his clients more than she ever worried about me. She opened her mouth and closed it. She left. I watched her walk away and recognized the posture of someone who expects life to catch her every time she jumps. I went home, sat on the edge of the bed, and let the reality settle. The old life was over. The next part would be paperwork and cold mornings and friends picking sides. The part after that I could not see yet. I stood up and started packing the pieces of myself that were still mine. I knew I would sleep a little tonight because the hardest sentence had finally been spoken out loud: we were done. I changed the locks the next morning. I sent Claire the new building code for emergency access only and copied the lawyer. She replied with a thumbs up icon and the word "received." It felt like dealing with a coworker after a resignation. I messaged our wider group of friends and said I would be stepping back for a while. I did not write details. People can smell blood under vague words. 2 of them called to ask if the rumor was true. I said I would not discuss it. One said, "I'm sorry, man," and the other said, "I always thought Mark was too smooth." I realized some people had seen angles I refused to see. I spent the first week after separation building a new routine so the empty spaces would not swallow me. Work, gym, home, cooking simple food I could finish eating. I deleted photos from my phone that pulled me backward. I kept a few I needed to remember who I was before this. I moved our wedding album to a box and taped it shut. I labeled it Archive. Not trash. Not display. Just past. The lawyer moved fast. He filed for separation with evidence of infidelity so we could close things without alimony claims. He asked me to stay off social media. He said nothing online helps in real life. I listened. Claire's lawyer mirrored our proposals with minor edits. She wanted her personal savings untouched and her pension rights cleanly separated. Done. She wanted to keep the car. Not done. We negotiated. She took a small payout instead and I kept the car. It all felt like selling furniture after a fire. Mark stayed silent for 10 days, then sent a long email titled "Foreclosure." He wrote about guilt, therapy, and childhood patterns. He wrote that he had always felt like a visitor in his own life and that with Claire he felt like a main character. The phrase made me close the laptop. People turned my life into their character development. I did not reply. He followed with a second email ending with, "I hope one day you'll see that I didn't take her from you, you both had already lost each other." I archived it. I would not let him steal my narrative too. The first real hit after the lawyer letters came from my landlord. The lease renewal was due in 4 months. He asked if both names would stay on it. I said no. He said rent would go up. I said fine. He looked at my face and lowered his voice like he was talking to someone in a hospital. I thanked him anyway. Pity is better than contempt. Claire showed up on a Saturday to collect the rest of her things. She brought 2 friends and 3 boxes. I let them in and stepped aside. She moved through the apartment like a guest in a hotel, careful not to touch what wasn't hers. She paused at the framed photo again and left it on the shelf. She took the books she loved and left the ones she pretended to love. That detail cut deeper than it should have. I realized how much acting lives in the quiet corners of a home. As she was leaving, she turned and said, "I know you hate me." I said I would not give her that. Hate is a connection. I wanted none. She nodded and stood there like she wanted to ask something. She didn't. She left. 2 days later, Mark's ex, Anna, messaged me. We had never been close, but we had been friendly. She wrote that she left Mark 6 months ago because she found messages from Claire. My lungs stalled. She sent redacted screenshots, late-night confessions, "You understand me, we are the same, I can't stop thinking about your hands." The dates told me the 3-month claim was a lie. It started at least 6 months earlier. I thanked her and sent the screenshots to my lawyer. He said it changed nothing in the process but confirmed the pattern. It changed everything in my head. They had been building this while sitting in my living room eating my food and telling me I looked tired. I forwarded one screenshot to Claire with a single line, "Correct the timeline for my sanity." She replied in 5 minutes, "You're right. I lied about when. I was ashamed." I typed, "You weren't ashamed in Lisbon." I didn't send it. I wrote, "Thank you for confirming," and closed the thread. That small control, choosing not to stab with a sentence, felt like a piece of myself returning. Work became my shelter. I took extra shifts and volunteered for the projects no one wanted. My boss pulled me aside and asked if I was burning out. I said I was burning something out. He nodded because he had been divorced once and recognized the look. Nights were the worst. I would lie down and the movie would start, the airport, the hand, the laugh. I learned to get up when the movie started. I made tea, I folded laundry, I wrote lists. One night at 2 a.m. I wrote everything I was angry about in bullet points. I filled 2 pages. Then I wrote everything I was grateful for. The list was shorter and more honest. It had my sister's stove cleaning, my father's sentence about furniture, the lawyer's dry confidence, and the neighbor who nodded at me in the hall without asking questions. I slept after that. 2 weeks later, my father asked me to help him fix a door at their place. We worked in silence. After, he handed me a small notebook. "Write what you refuse to carry into your next life," he said. I wrote 3 lines. I refuse to carry people who hide knives in smiles. I refuse to carry the need to be the calm one while others create storms. I refuse to carry shame for being betrayed. I tore out the page and burned it in the sink. Dramatic, maybe. Necessary, definitely. Claire sent an email asking if we could meet for closure. I said closure is private work. She sent one more line, "I'm sorry for turning you into the enemy in my head to justify what I did." It was the first sentence that felt like truth. It did not change the outcome. It made the temperature in my chest drop a degree. Mark broke the silence with a message to a group chat of 10 of us. An apology drafted by a PR firm would have read the same. He wrote about boundaries and "the heart wants." People reacted with awkward emojis. A friend, Julian, messaged me privately, "Do you want me to kick him from the group?" I said no. I wasn't going to clean their social circles for them. People can choose who they want to stand next to. The divorce agreement finalized in 6 weeks. We signed in a quiet office that smelled like paper and old coffee. Claire's hand shook a little when she wrote her name. Mine didn't. I was past shaking. The clerk stamped the final page and said, "All set." 2 words, and a whole life changed category from present to past. Outside the office, Claire asked if I had anything to say to her before we stopped being husband and wife. I said yes. "Thank you for being clear at the end, even if you weren't in the middle." She nodded, tears spilling. I didn't wipe them. That job was not mine anymore. Weeks turned into a month. I stopped checking their profiles. People sent me photos of them together. I asked them to stop. I didn't need fresh salt. I went to the gym, added weight, counted reps. Numbers do not lie. I ate with my parents on Sundays. I learned to sit alone at a restaurant without feeling like the room was watching. I bought a new mug and threw the old one out without a ceremony. Then something I didn't expect happened. Mark's younger brother, Lucas, called me. He said Mark had been cut from a client contract after a rumor reached them. He said he knew I didn't spread it and wanted to tell me he respected that. He said Mark was spiraling. I thanked him for telling me. I hung up and sat with that information. I felt no joy, only the echo of a warning: everything breaks somewhere. Sometimes it breaks where it should. Claire messaged me a month later to say she had moved into a small place alone. I didn't ask if Mark lived there. She said she wanted to pay me back for a trip we booked before everything, one I had paid for and cancelled. She transferred the amount. I stared at the notification and felt a clean line inside me. Debts closed. Pages turned. On a random Thursday, I ran into them. I walked into a bookstore and there they were in the aisle, laughing at a joke on a notebook cover. Claire saw me first. Her smile vanished. Mark turned and froze. For 3 long seconds, the air was thick with our old life. Then I said, "Excuse me," stepped past them, grabbed the book I wanted, paid, and left. I didn't look back. I walked outside and exhaled like I had been underwater. That was my victory. Not a speech. Not a scene. Just the absence of a need to perform pain. I started seeing a therapist because I kept waking with clenched teeth and headaches. I told her the story without drama. She nodded and asked, "What did you learn about yourself?" I said I learned I was calmer than I thought and angrier than I wanted to be. She said both can be true. I said I learned I can live with loss and not make it my personality. She smiled and said, "Good." Spring came. My sister dragged me to a flea market. I bought a bench for the balcony and sat there at sunrise with coffee. I wrote in the notebook my father gave me. I wrote sentences that weren't about them. That's when I realized the betrayal had stopped being the headline of my life. It was just a paragraph in a long story I would one day tell without my voice shaking. A last message came from Claire on a quiet evening. It said, "I heard you're doing better. I'm glad." I wrote back, "I am." She sent, "I'll always regret how I did it." I wrote, "I know." We left it there. No meeting. No coffee. No friendship. Some endings deserve a door, not a window. I don't have a moral to give. I have facts. My wife said she needed space and took it with my best friend's hand in hers. I saw it. It hurt the way bone hurts when it breaks clean. We did the papers. We divided the pieces. I kept my name and my spine. They kept each other. Maybe they will make it. Maybe they won't. That is no longer my business. What is my business is how I live with myself now. I answer that by cooking for people who never made me choose between my dignity and their comfort. I answer it by keeping my phone face up and my calendar honest. I answer it by trusting slowly and listening to the small alarms in my chest that I used to silence for peace. Sometimes I drive past the airport at night and watch planes lift. I don't think about them leaving anymore. I think about arrivals. I think about how some people return to themselves only after everyone else is done with them. That was me. I arrived back to myself with a box of documents, a new mug, a quiet apartment, and a balcony bench that faces the sunrise. If you're waiting for a happier sentence, here it is: I am okay. Not because the people who broke me apologized the right way, or because karma did something viral. I am okay because I chose to stop begging the past to behave. I chose the steady life I used to love, but this time with doors that lock from the inside and a rule written in my notebook in thick letters: if someone needs space, let them have it, and keep yours.
Follow me for more stories.